He began singing as a young boy in the church choir. He also picked up a harmonica at a very early age. Growing up, he was exposed to much country and rock and roll music, but he fell in love with the sound of Little Walter. His name is Larry Kurtz. Today, Larry is the founder of the annual Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival. His passion for music also extends to his band. Trouble and Strife have been playing their own brand of soulful music for 10 years. The singer-songwriter also makes the beautiful hills surrounding Orangeville his home. Join me, Diana Bumbaca, as I talk one-on-one with Larry Kurtz right after this break. Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Diana Bumbaca, and joining me today is Larry Kurtz. Larry, thank you very much for joining me.
It's great to be here.
Now, Larry, as the founder of the Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival, how did you feel when it first launched in 2003?
Well, it felt great when it first launched. It was a lot of preparation, and it was a really good feeling when it actually was all put together and it happened. It was awesome. What purpose did you feel that the festival served? I felt the festival was necessary because in this town, in Orangeville, we have a lot of music, but it was never all put together in one spot for a weekend. We have a lot of individual events, and this was a whole festival, a whole weekend of music. I thought that would be the way to go. So what do you feel it contributed to the community? I feel that the festival has provided an opportunity for everybody in the town to get together and celebrate being outside, for one thing, the first sort of outdoor event of the year, and we get to see fantastic musicians who normally would not be in this town. Another nice thing is everybody can participate. It's free. There's no admission charge. Nate, can you tell me about some of the artists that participated in the event? Sure. The very first year we were very lucky. We had a Juno Award winner who won the Juno about a month before our festival. So we had Jack DeKaiser, and we've had lots of great local talent, such as people like Heather Katz and Perry Joseph and Ryan Grist, as well as, you know, award-winning acts in blues and jazz world. For instance, we've had Rob McConnell and Cuban jazz musician Hilario Duran. We had last year's Juno winner Jane Bennett, so some really big names. What was your turnout like? The very first year, we did one day, and we had a turnout of about 2,000 people overall. And last year, we had 14,000 people, so it's really grown. And is your crowd a wide range of ages, or is it more to one side? I would say we have the complete range. We have families with their little children up dancing around to the music, all the way through to seniors and everybody in between. It's for everybody, really. Is there one story that kind of sticks out from any of the years that it's been running that you think of as a really great success story? Well, one thing that I think is a great success is that the festival has allowed some of our local musicians, my band included, to play in front of a larger audience on a big professional stage and be on stage alongside all these great artists. It sure elevates your band's abilities and great exposure. One in particular, Ryan Grist, local saxophone player, Humber Jazz graduate, has been able to bring in really great guests like Pat LaBarbera and Alex Dean, who are very well known in Canadian jazz, and so it's been a great opportunity for him. And he was already very good to start with, but his playing level has just come up so high because of these experiences, and I think that's been a real success.
What do you hope to see for the future of the festival?
What I'd like to see is really I'd like to just see it continue to maybe not get really huge, but just to have the quality stay really high, and continue to bring in artists that are not normally heard on the radio, on not on the commercial radio stations yet, who are great in their own right, and give people here an opportunity to experience them.
When did your interest in music first begin?
My musical interest, I suppose, began when I was a young boy singing in church, sang in church choir, and when I was a kid, I had a very nice high boy's voice, and when it changed when I was about 13, I was a little disappointed. It wasn't quite as strong, but I still do the best I can with it. And I guess there was always country music in our house, which my mom and dad listened to, and I never really heard anything else until I got a little older and started listening to rock and roll. And I think, as I was a teenager, that was the thing for me. Loved rock and roll.
What was the first instrument that you played?
The very first instrument I played, I suppose, was I played an accordion.
Really?
I took some lessons, yeah. And at the end of the lessons, I was required to buy an accordion, and it was a little too much money. So I think that was probably my first instrument. I played trumpet in high school band, which I think I may pick up again sometime. And then during that time, I also picked up harmonica, which I play now.
That's right. And now I know you also had a radio show quite a while ago on 88.1 FM. Can you tell me about that experience?
Sure. The local radio station here in Orangeville, it used to be located in the same building as Choice's youth shelter is now. And there was an opportunity for local people to do specialty radio shows. So I had a 2-hour radio show called Roots and Blues, and advertised it over the internet, and was able to attract CDs and recordings from artists from all over the world. So it was really cool to be able to get on the air and play some of my favorite stuff for people.
Well, when we come back from break, we're going to talk a little bit more about Trouble and Strife.
Great.
Please stay with us. There's more to come on One with Larry Kurtz. Welcome back to One. Joining me today is Larry Kurtz. Now, Larry, just before we went to break, I mentioned Trouble and Strife. That is the name of your band. How long have you been together?
The band Trouble and Strife, we've been together 10 years. The original members, there's only myself and Bruce Lee are the two originals that are remaining in the band. Some of the other members have changed over the years. When I first started the band, it was just a friend of mine who was a drummer, also a fellow woodworker, and we were just getting together in my garage and hacking around for fun, and I discovered another woodworking friend was a guitar player, invited him over, and we started playing, and before I knew it, he knew somebody else, and we had a band formed. So we weren't very good at first, and but we sure loved doing it, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, where did the name for the band come from?
The name of the band was chosen by one of our original guitar players, Malcolm Batty. And Malcolm used to be the owner of Tequila Cove up in Mono Center, and being British, he thought it was a clever play on words, the British Cockney slang, trouble and strife for your wife, and being a blues band, lots of trouble and strife. So the name came from Malcolm.
And now I know that you have an album out. How is it recording your first album?
It's been really, really cool. We went into a large studio down in Mississauga at Metal Works, which was started by the band Triumph years ago. So a lot of famous bands have recorded there. Anybody big in Canadian music has recorded there. Christina Aguilera records there. It's a very well-known studio. And for us, the advantage of going down there is that we were able to get in the studio all together and play in a large space. Everybody could see each other, and we were playing together as a band, rather than for instance, a band like Pink Floyd, when they recorded The Wall, there was never two musicians in the room together at once. So you get a real nice live feel. And it also freed up our producer, Bruce, has his own studio up in Mulmer. And we were able to go and record all the tracks in Mississauga, leave Bruce free to be a player. And after everything was recorded, we took it to his studio and did all the mixing and the vocal takes. So it was a very sort of live done CD.
What were some of the challenges you faced?
Some of the challenges, I suppose, were when we were in the studio, just the fact of trying to get the right take. We didn't want to overplay the songs, and almost everything you hear on the album was our first try. It was never as good as the first time, so it's sort of that's the feeling you want, and leave the odd little mistake in it. You know, that's what blues are like. You know, if you play a bad note, play it twice, and people think you meant it.
Is there a theme for the album?
I would say, you know, it's not a conceptual album, but it's, you know, it's sort of your life experiences. You know, one of the songs called "Hard Times on a Blue Planet." So just sort of a lot of personal experiences. The songs are either written by Bruce or myself, so they're a lot, you know, a lot of the things that we've gone through.
Is there a song that means the most to you on the album, and if so, why? Yeah,
I would have to say, for me, there's a song called Millie's Blues, and it's written about my mother. So about how she grew up in a family with 11 kids down in Port Credit, and her father died when she was 5 years old, and my grandmother raised 11 kids by herself and was a nurse at a psychiatric hospital working nights, and so it was not easy for them. And that song means a lot to me, and it seems to get a very good response. Everyone who hears it seems to really like it.
Now on the album you have 10 band originals and one cover song called "Keep on Drinking."
Yes.
Why did you include that one?
"Keep on Drinking" seems to be just a song that gets everybody up dancing, and it's just a great song. It's a very unusual song. It was written in the 1930s by a really sort of obscure blues artist, and he was as well as being a blues artist, he was a moonshining whiskey runner, and it was sort of about his experiences. And this song, I've never heard the original version, but it was taught to us by another musician friend of ours, and it just seems to be something that gets everybody up dancing, and we thought we should include it.
Okay, well, after break, we're going to talk a little bit more about blues. Please stay with us. There's more to come with Larry Kurtz on One on One. Welcome back to One on One. Joining me today is Larry Kurtz. Now, Larry, before we went to break, we talked a little bit about your band and your CD. What is it that attracts you to blues?
I think for me, the very first thing that attracted me to blues was I heard the sound of a harmonica and thought, man, I love that sound. I wish I could do that. And it took a long time before I could do that. But the thing I like about blues, I suppose, is it can just it feels like it can be something. If you're not feeling very good, it can lift you back up. And also a lot of personal stories, I guess, in the way that country music does as well. But it's also, I always think of blues as music that comes from here in your heart and down in your gut, whereas I love jazz music as well, but it seems to come from your mind. It's more intellectual. But, you know, there's schools to go and learn how to play jazz, but there sure are no blues schools. You know, you learn it by doing it or by watching and listening. So that's what I love about it.
Do you write your own music?
Yes, I do.
And where do you find inspiration for that?
I suppose sometimes the songs just come to me in waves. I'll get a little idea and scribble it down, or I may hear somebody else's tune and I think, oh yeah, I love that, but I bet you I could change it and make it sound more like the way I would like it to sound. So I think the inspiration comes from, you know, maybe, you know, there's been times where things haven't been going well, and all of a sudden songs come to me, or also when things are going great and a song will come to you, and I don't know where they come from. They kind of, it's not, I don't dream them, or it's, you know, I'm awake. It's just an idea will just pop into my head.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you play the harmonica.
Yes.
What other instruments are played in your band?
We have 2 guitars, father and son Bruce Lee, and his son Michael just turned 22. He's a great lead guitar player, so he plays guitar with us. We have bass and drums as well, and Bruce is a fantastic piano player, so he plays some piano on our CD.
What to you makes a good blues musician?
I think the greatest blues musicians are the people who don't think about what they're doing and they can't help it. They just sing and play and it comes out of them. Those are the greatest musicians to me. They haven't done anything contrived or by a formula, and they're probably all a little bit different. You know, they're just being themselves. That's a great musician to me.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of your musical inspirations?
Sure. Who do I like? I love Little Walter's harmonica playing, and Little Walter was one of the first harmonica players to plug in the harmonica. You know, it's a little tiny instrument,
yes.
But he plugged it into an electric amplifier. Once the guitars were electric, you couldn't hear the harmonica anymore, so he plugged it into an amp, and he played like a saxophone player. He loved Charlie Parker and some saxophone players like that, so he played a lot of horn lines, just like you would hear in a big band, so he was very unique. Another great harmonica player that I love is Sonny Boy Williamson, and again, he was more of a, you know, Little Walter was from the city, Sonny Boy was from the country, and he hardly ever played through an amplifier, but he was very rhythmic and a real character. He wore a hat, smoked a cigar, and he was a really great player as well. Love those 2.
Do you play through an amplifier at all?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I play through an amplifier and I play without an amplifier depending on what the song is or where we're playing. Sometimes Bruce and I will go out and play as a duet, just a harmonica and a guitar, and other times we have the full band on a big stage, so it depends on the situation.
Okay, now when we come back from break, I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about where blues originated and if your album has some of that rural, humble feeling to it.
Great.
Please stay with us. There's more to come with Larry Kurtz after this break. Welcome back to One-on-One. With me today is Larry Kurtz. Larry, can you tell me a little bit about where the blues originated and the history of it?
Sure. From what I've read and from what I've talked to people about, blues was really originated in Africa, and at the time when slaves were being brought over to the U.S., they brought with them their own musical traditions, and of course, the conditions on a cotton farm were really harsh, and people had to work long hours and in the hot sun, and to pass the time, they would sing, and they would call them work songs. And I think the blues really originated out of those African rhythms mixed with their new life in the U.S., and it was a way for people to make it through those hard days, and sort of a sense of keeping their heritage, and also it also allowed them to make it through those hard days where they felt they were unified and working together and helping each other out. It started there, and it's sort of as people migrated to the cities, they took with them those rural traditions, and those rhythms became, for instance, in places like New Orleans, a real melting pot, because there were not only people from Africa, there were people from Europe and people from South America all mixing together and creating new music. So I think blues really started way back then and evolved into, people moved north to find work. They moved to Chicago, and that was a real hotbed of blues players, city players mixing with country players and forming a new style of music.
Now, some people say that blues has a humble, rural feel to it. Do you feel that your music does?
I think it does. We, both Bruce and I live in the country. I live on the edge of town in Orangeville. I feel like I'm in the country, and Bruce lives out on a farm up in Mulmer, so yeah, we seem to have a slightly different sound than maybe some of the bands from Toronto or some of the bigger cities. I love the sounds of those bands, but ours just we seem to have, because our lifestyle maybe is slightly a slower pace, it seems to really come out, and we just can't help it. It's just the way it sounds, and we don't try to be anybody but ourselves.
So living in Dufferin County definitely impacts your music.
Definitely, it sure does. It's been a big impact. I grew up in Brampton, but I've lived up here for 20 years, and I really love it here because it's quiet here, yet you're close to the city. If you want to go down there, we're close to going to the beach, you know, very close to Wasaga Beach area, and I find as soon as I come up Caledon Mountain, the air is fresher, you know, it's a little cooler. I like that. It's great.
Who are some of the other artists that you have had an opportunity to collaborate with?
I've been very lucky. Since I started doing this in 1999, I used to bring in some blues artists to the Mad Hatter restaurant, the old Mad Hatter location, and in blues, one of the biggest names of all time is Muddy Waters, and I was able to bring in the drummer from Muddy Waters band to sort of become a friend of ours, and people in Orangeville have seen him quite a bit, so they know Willie Big Eye Smith. And one of Muddy Waters' harmonica players, James Cotton, who is also a very famous harmonica player, got the opportunity to be the opening act for him at a show, and even some of the local Canadian bands like Downchild Blues Band got to know the members of that band, and that's the really fun part for me, is getting to hang out with these people.
Now, beyond your musical career, you have another career. You are a mill worker.
Yes.
How did you get into that?
Well, I went to school. I went to Sheridan College for media studies, and in the summer I started my own student painting business and decided that I liked it and never went back. And I've worked for myself ever since, but I guess I got into the mill work in the wintertime. I never had enough work the first few years, so I went to work for other people who did woodworking, learned a little bit about it. What I do, though, in the shop now is very specialized. We reproduce all the woodwork for old farmhouses, so all the moldings, baseboard casing, screen doors, fireplace mantles, and our specialty is making it look like it was always there. So we duplicate to the original style, which is, there's not too many people who do that.
How do you balance the two careers?
Well, the woodworking suffers sometimes because I love the music, but I love the woodworking as well. So it's not easy. I don't know. Don't sleep.
Larry, I wanted to say thank you very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to be able to speak with you.
Great to be here, and nice to meet you.
That wraps up another edition of One on One. Thank you for watching, and we hope you join us next time.